What's up, guys? It's been years, almost years, since I made a video on this channel, and today we're gonna talk about Fujifilm lenses once again. You know, I realized that one of my most watched videos on this channel was about 5 years ago, and I have been talking about Fujifilm lenses, and I just want to pick up on exactly this topic because things have changed, and I have changed my mind concerning lenses and concerning the most important lenses that I would recommend to anybody starting out in photography. And probably most people that are starting out in photography are unsure about the lenses. And it's a really tough topic, to be honest, because everybody takes different pictures. Everybody's approach to photography is completely different, and it's hard to cover that in a video. But everything I say will also be explained, and I will let you know why I chose the lenses that I chose. So let's get into it. The first lens that I want to talk about is the XF10 to 24. I'm going to show it to you without the lens hood. It's not really big. I mean, compared to the second lens that we're going to talk about. It is big, but you know, size doesn't really matter with the Fujifilm X system because all of the lenses are pretty small compared to full frame DSLR lenses. And that's what I have been using before I switched to Fujifilm. So anyway, the 10 to 24 is my favorite Fujifilm lens. And it took a while for me to really realize that. This lens is mostly concerned as a landscape photographer's lens. And to be honest, yes, you can take awesome landscape photos with this lens. But it's not just for landscape photography. You can even do a portrait session with it. Well, at least if you take like half body portrait, it's not so good for full close up for just the face because you have to get in really close and it will distort the face a lot. So maybe for half body, it's great. It's also great for shooting inside, like for event photography, or if you shoot architecture, or if you shoot street photography. It's also a great lens for street photography. But in all of those areas, it depends a lot on your style of photography because with the 10 to 24, you will get a really large depth of field, which means that your subject will be in focus, obviously, but also the background will be in focus almost all of the time. So this will make it difficult for beginners to make a clean looking photo. To have a good composition is really key when you use a lens like this because everything is in focus and the subject may be in competition with the background. So in my opinion, it's necessary to really carefully select the background so it doesn't overwhelm the viewer with too much information. You know what I mean? Hopefully, at least I will also show you a lot of pictures that I shot with this lens so you get an idea what I'm talking about. So 10 to 24, and I have realized that I'm using this lens almost 90% of the time at the widest setting with 10 millimeters. So you get a really large field of view. A lot of things are in your frame, which is awesome because imagine being on a road trip through the US or being on a road trip on Iceland, or standing in Santorini and enjoying the sunset, it's not just a small subject that is interesting, it's everything you see, and the whole experience can be captured with this lens. And that's why I love this lens, because it really brings the viewer in my situation. And it shows you everything that you see with your eyes, and even more, because the field of view is much wider than what you experience when you look at the scene with just your eyes. So you would really have to move your head to see everything that this lens puts in one picture. Now, you can also use the lens in a much closer field of view. You can zoom in to 24 millimeters. And I also do that, obviously, but I don't do it as much as I do the 10 millimeter shots. Now, that being said, when you're at 24, you're almost at 23. And 23 is a really, really versatile focal length. And I always told people that the 23 is my favorite lens. It's hard to tell, but I think it still sort of is my favorite lens. But I can use the 10 to 24 at 23 or 24, but I cannot use the 23 at 10. So this is a compromise regarding focal length. But the 23 has the better aperture. And that's also something we need to talk about when we talk about this lens, because it's just f4. And a lot of people might be concerned about f4 because it's not really a good aperture, so to speak. But does it really matter? Is it really important? And to be honest, sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. Let me explain. With a wide-angle lens, the aperture is not that important, because even with a wide aperture, you would still get a really large depth of field. So you wouldn't be able to blur your background. There is one exception, and the exception is the 16 f1.4, because it has a really close focal distance. So you can get in really close and show small subjects really big. And with that exception, you can get a really blurry background even though you're at a wide angle. But that doesn't happen with the 10 to 24. So the f4 is not an issue. The only issue is that you will have to increase your ISO or deal with a longer shutter speed. That being said, I think modern Fujifilm cameras deal with high ISO really, really well. And to me, it's not an issue. So if you're concerned about high ISO, this might be an issue for you. But in my experience, it's not an issue at all. So that being said, this is an awesome lens. And on my latest trip to Greece, I shot all photos with this lens. I also took the 35 and the 56 with me, but I didn't take a single photo with these lenses. Not because they're bad lenses, but just because this lens did it all for me. So, your experience may be different, but this is about my experience and my thoughts. I'm curious what you think about that so far. Please leave a comment and let's discuss what I just told you. Let's move on to my second recommendation, if I could only pick two Fujifilm lenses. And that would be the good old 35 1.4. This is my first Fujifilm lens. I got it with the X Pro 1. I think it was in 2013. So it's, wow, this is 10 years old. 10 years ago, I bought this lens, and it's still one of my favorite lenses. Amazing. And there have been upgrades to this lens, I know. But I never felt the need to replace this one. I know it's not as sharp as the latest lenses. I know the autofocus is not as fast as the latest lenses autofocus, but I don't care. I love the images that this lens produces. And it has a certain mood, it has a certain look that you just don't get with the new lenses. And everybody that owns this lens will tell you the same thing. It's really hard to explain, but I feel there is some kind of difference. And also, that being said, that may sound stupid, but the longer you use a lens and the more you take it with you, the more you travel with that lens, and the more awesome memories you took with this lens, the more you want to keep it. So this is my first Fujifilm lens that also makes it special. And that's why I always take this with me, and I don't want to replace it unless I need to. But that being said, whatever lens you pick, the 35 millimeter focal length is awesome. It's pretty versatile, but it's a completely different experience, and it has a completely different purpose than the 10 to 24. Let's talk about that a little more detail. The 35 is way more tight. The field of view is much smaller, and you have to be more selective with your subjects. That also means that it's easier to take a reduced and good photo with the 35. Now, what does a good photo mean? As I just said, for the most part, in my opinion, it's reducing the photo to what's only really necessary. So you shouldn't put things in your frame that don't belong there. It gets harder if your field of view is really wide. It gets more easy if your field of view is narrow. And with the 35, you get not a really narrow field of view, but it's way easier. Plus, with the f1.4, you will be able to get your background out of focus. So you get a nice bokeh, and especially if your main subject is portrait or people, this would be a much better choice. It doesn't zoom, I know, but I wouldn't I don't need the zoom with the 10 to 24. If this was a 10 millimeter lens, I would have gotten the 10 millimeter lens. I don't need the 10 to 24, but I need the 10, so this was the lens to go. With the 35, you have a fixed focal length, which means that if you want to change what's in your picture, you will have to go closer or step back, which is not an issue at all. And I'm really also a big fan of prime lenses because shooting with prime lenses will improve your photography 100% because it's less convenient and you're not able to solve issues with your framing and your subject by zooming. So you will have to walk. So you are forced to do something that you would otherwise conveniently just solve by zooming. And this will always lead to a better composition because you have to think about your framing and your perspective way more than with a zoom lens. So, in general, I would always recommend that you get at least one prime lens in your kit. Not because it has a wider aperture most of the time. That's nice, of course, but obviously because of the training effect that a prime lens will have on your photography. So consider that when you think about your lenses. The prime lens that you choose may also be an old lens that you use by connecting it with an adapter and focusing manually. That's totally fine. But it may also be something like the 35, f1.4 or f2 or whatever. 33, the new 33 is also a great option, but it doesn't really change a lot. It's just a different name. Slight differences in quality, in focus speed, and whatever. And unless you're shooting really fast moving subjects, it doesn't matter, really. I promise you, it doesn't matter at all. And regarding sharpness, I would bet that 95% of you have never printed their image at all, or probably not larger than this. So, who cares about the last 10-20% sharpness increase, honestly? If you took a great picture, it's a great picture. And it's not a great picture because it's the sharpest picture that you could take, but it's a great picture because it's a great situation, it's great lighting, it's an interesting subject, and because it has been an experience for you to be there. That's what makes a great photo. And the choice of lenses is important. Of course, it's really important, but it's by far not the most important thing. Now, I hope these thoughts helped you pick the perfect lens for you. And to be honest, give me whatever lens you want and I will take a great photo with it. These two have been my favorites in the last few weeks and months. And especially the 10-24 has been a really reliable companion on all of my journeys. And to add something to the 10-24, this one is not weather resistant, but I don't care. I took this beneath a waterfall in Iceland and it was really wet. And it didn't matter. Nothing happened. Neither my camera nor the lens were weather resistant and everything is fine. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't get a weather resistant lens, but I think you shouldn't overthink these kinds of things. Anyway, I'm going to close with more photos of both lenses. Let me know what you think about my little talk right here. And also let me know which lens is your favorite lens below in the comments. Have a good day. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Goodbye.